Trash Talk TV, we are back for another season. Nash, how do we feel about that?
I'm feeling so good. I'm rejuvenated. I'm youthful. I'm kind of glowing, honestly.
Yeah, you are glowing, like a pregnancy glow.
I I didn't want to tell you, but
Well, anyway, it's great to be back, folks. For our returning fans, thanks for sticking with us, and for new listeners, welcome. If you're new here, I'm your host, Emily, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Nash. If you're a fan of trashy reality TV, well, you've come to the right place, and we appreciate you tuning in. So we're going to kick off season 2.5, let's call it, because it's a mini season this time, with an entirely new show. We're stepping away from our Bachelor Nation roots, and Nash and I are going to be taking a crack at Netflix's latest reality show, Sexy Beast. Our fans asked, and we're here to deliver, unfortunately.
yeah, thank you so much.
So for everyone who voted for Sexy Beast, we hear you, we appreciate you, and I guess we're going to give you what you asked for.
Yep!
For those
so excited.
Unfamiliar with this new show, the basic concept is this. Lucky singles are chosen to compete for each other's hearts while not knowing what the other looks like. Each contestant is put in ridiculous makeup and forced to actually date people for who they are, not what they look like. Each episode, there is one, let's call them the Bachelor or Bachelorette, and 3 other contestants competing for their heart. First, the contestants compete in a round of speed dating. After the initial dates, the contestants return to what is being referred to as the Sexy Beast Manor, where one contestant is eliminated by the Bachelor or Bachelorette. After elimination, the loser reveals their true face and a second round of more intimate dates ensue. After that, the Bachelor or Bachelorette chooses their sexy beast and they ride off into the sunset. Nash, what was your initial reaction when I told you that we were going to be doing recaps of this show?
Well, at first I thought it was just some weird kink thing. But then I was like, oh, okay, it's just like it's just like their gimmick. And that actually I was kind of excited just because that kind of novelty to it, it's like a good idea. And I feel like the writer's room at Netflix, like they're always like, yep, do it. You got an idea? Let's go full throttle with it.
Yeah, I'll say initially I was really thinking this show was going to surprise me because Netflix's last 2 reality dating shows I think are some of the best ones out there right now, and I wasn't expecting that from them. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm referring to Love is Blind and Too Hot to Handle, which you can watch on Netflix right now. For Love is Blind, the basic concept is you fall in love with people, but you can't see them. Too Hot to Handle is you're falling in love with people, but you can't touch them. Sexy Beast is essentially those 2 things combined, but you don't want to do either. You don't want to touch them, you don't want to see them. It's a really interesting concept for a dating show. Whether or not I was pleasantly surprised, I guess that's for you guys to continue to tune in and find out. The basic layout for how these episodes are going to go is in each episode, Nash and I are going to recap 2 episodes of Sexy Beast at a time and give our thoughts. So for those who haven't watched episodes 1 and 2 of the first season of Sexy Beast just yet, this is your official spoiler warning.
Oh.
All right. So episode 1, let's talk about our bachelorette for the episode. Her name was Emma. She's a model from New York, and she's the devil.
Yeah.
We start off strong with Devil Woman, and her lucky men competing for her heart are Bennett the Baboon, Archie the Stone God, and Adam the Little White Mouse. So, great options to choose from right off the bat.
Yeah.
We don't really know a lot about these guys. We don't really know too much about Emma either. One thing I did notice is these episodes are very quick. The dates move very fast. And all in all, it's pretty goofy, to put it kindly. The people are goofy, the dates are goofy. I mean, essentially, the dates, unlike what we're used to seeing, where the dates are very elaborate and guided and they want people to really pull out their true selves and be vulnerable. We don't get that at all with this show. This is very much you're going to a bar, you're sitting down, and you look like a complete idiot.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're doing sort of like almost normal date stuff, and you're just in this ridiculous outfit.
Yeah.
And that's what I really like, to seeing how people sort of adjust to that, because like you get some people, it's like they focus heavily on that, they talk about it, and you get other people that kind of, they mention it when it's blatantly apparent, but then they kind of just sort of shrug it off and kind of treat it just like a normal date.
Yeah, I was shocked to see how normal people were acting and how normal the dates were. I mean, it really was. They were sitting in a restaurant. It was speed dating. Emma sits down with each guy. They get to know each other on a very, very basic level while they all look ridiculous. So we get a little bit of sense of who they are from that. It seems like despite the fact that all of these men have pounds of makeup and fur on their face, they were all pretty cocky and arrogant. You would think looking like a literal baboon would humble you a little bit, but not for the male species, apparently. I was very shocked to see how cocky they all were, especially the mouse as well. The mouse and the baboon were very, very cocky and confident in themselves and in this date. And the whole time they're doing this, they have no idea what's under all of that makeup for either of them.
Yeah.
It's a weird way to date and get to know someone, and especially Bennett kept saying, she'd love me if she could see me, if only she could see me, and it's like I don't know, man. Like, I don't think you're getting the point of the show if that's what you keep. Like, the whole point is that she can't see you and she's gonna form a connection with you anyway. So that's a little glimpse at our guys. Nash, who did you think she was feeling it with the most based on the speed dates?
I felt right off the bat that it was Bennett, who was the baboon. And I thought Archie, no, not Archie, Adam. I thought those two guys were doing the best. But one thing I did want to ask you was sort of how, this is episode 1, so there's obviously a cognitive choice. They could have done any episode as episode 1, right? So they made like a choice to do Emma, who's a model in New York, as like the first bachelorette. So like, how do you feel? Like, do you think that was good to sort of get the point of the show across, or not so good?
I would say that was probably very intentional because it wants to, or the production team, I should say, wants you to be sitting at home thinking, wow, she must be gorgeous under that. If the guys aren't getting that from their personality, they're going to miss out. Plus, I feel like having someone who's a model is, I guess, a bit of credibility to their attractiveness, let's say. And I feel like on a show this out there, if it was all just very average or below average looking people competing, it might be a little disappointing when they reveal themselves and, it's Frank from down the hall. It's this very average looking dude. So I definitely think they started with her because of her background. I don't, and we'll talk about more as we get into the episode, I don't think there's anything necessarily about this episode that stood out to me any more than the second episode, other than the fact that her being a model was mentioned a lot. Like, you don't hear about what anyone else really does, maybe a little bit of their interest, but this is the only one where it's like, oh yeah, like we have this New York model here, like she was willing to do this to form this connection. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of weird.
In a good way or a bad way?
It's sort of a bad way, because I feel like, okay, the whole point of the show is just sort of like, you can't see them. You don't know what they look like. But then to have a job description that kind of requires you to be good looking, like I want every character to look like Bob down the hallway or whatever you said. Like that's how I want everybody to look. Because to me, I feel like that's sort of the actual point. Because it shouldn't matter. Like I feel like if every episode you get a bunch of really pretty people, then it's like, okay, well, what's the actual threat here if there are tons of just attractive people on the show? That's why I also thought it was kind of hard, because like if you have an ugly person on the show, like that's gonna be kind of mean, because
Yeah,
everyone's gonna be like, that's the ugly one.
I was thinking that as well. Well, one, I feel like for the guys, this was a very low risk event. She came
Yeah,
right after that saying, "Oh, I'm a model." So obviously in their heads, they all have this, I guess, baseline level that they're going to say, "Okay, she's at least this attractive if she's a model, or she's at least got this or this, whatever it is that they're looking for." Another
yeah,
thing that I found very, very interesting, and it must have been production asking them when we're getting to meet the guys. It seemed like they all had to state whether they were a boob guy or a butt guy, which I feel like, I don't know if it's to make the guys look goofy or if they were happy to answer that question. But I feel like, again, if the
yeah.
point is to fall in love with someone based on who they are as a person, it's very weird to have that as a prompt. Like, okay, yeah, this is what you're looking for. Like, give us 5 characteristics. Do you want kids someday? Where do you want to live? Oh, by the way, do you like boobs or butt better? Like, it just seemed really out there in the line of questioning, and I have to think they were prompted to respond with that. Otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't. It's, we are talking about 20-something-year-old men here, but
Yeah.
it takes away a little bit from, I think, the point.
What did you get from the speed dates? I kind of interrupted that.
Oh, yes, back to the speed dates. I got absolutely nothing from the speed dates. I felt like they were so superficial, like
Yeah,
this episode specifically, and I guess the show as a whole, and what we'll see throughout the season maybe, is this is a super low stakes dating game. There's no money at the end of it. There's no engagement at the end of it. It is literally just, do you want to be on TV and do you want to date somebody?
yeah,
That seems to be the baseline, which I'm a little disappointed to see because of the quality of other Netflix dating shows and what we're used to. But again, it's the first season. The concept from the get-go is a little out there. So maybe it'll evolve. Maybe we'll be
yeah,
shocked as the season goes on. But I felt like, at least from the speed dates, initially, I didn't think she was going to be into any of these guys. None of them seemed particularly interesting or intelligent in conversation. They all seemed to be very motivated by looks, which obviously were lacking in these situations. So I felt like they were all so hung up on either how they looked themselves or not knowing what she looked like that we didn't get anything substantial from them during the speed dates. Granted,
yeah,
we don't know how much time they had, whether it was 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or an hour each. We don't really know. All we know is that they were classified as speed dates. But I felt like from what we saw, there was no real connections. To your point, I agree that the strongest one seemed to be with Bennett. But again, that's not
yeah.
really saying much.
Didn't give a lot, and I will say it is a really interesting sort of pilot season for Netflix, just because I guess they don't, thinking about it, yeah, they never really do pilot episodes because they release entire seasons. And I mean, it's only 6 episodes with 20 minutes, so like that really adds to the fact, like what you're saying earlier, there isn't like a cult following, like there is with The Bachelor or The Bachelorette shows, where those people all become Instagram famous now after they're on the
Yeah.
show.
Which, for those who are following in Bachelor Nation, Nash, you haven't been following with Bachelor in Paradise. That's a huge, huge thing right now. I
Oh
won't get
God.
into it too much, but Nash, if you thought the drama in Bachelor Nation had
Oh Lord.
subsided, you really have no idea. But yeah, so back to your point, which is it's something I didn't really think about, is these people are doing this with nothing to gain, not even a social media following, not even a step in their career. It's literally just, it's like they almost signed up for speed dating and got roped into this and then said, screw it,
Yeah.
I already signed up, I might as well see it through.
20% off your next meal. Your
Yeah.
next meal.
You get a coupon for the bar that you sat at.
But I will say too, like, I have to give my hats off to our viewers for not suggesting or for not letting that win. So we got to not watch that. I'm very happy. And also, I feel like Netflix, it's as if they like have more of like a genuine approach to sort of the end goal with their shows. You know what I mean? Like they're separating like base temptations and stuff that people get like with being physical and just seeing them, like that aspect. They're like getting rid of it, and sort of that's like the whole reasoning for the show is like, okay, so you'll like, your odds are you're gonna like this person more because you actually like them for who they are, or you like them enough to listen to them and not just touch them and have that physical connection. Whereas like the reasoning behind like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette is just, there isn't any. It's just like drama. Here's a bunch of people. They all want you. You get to decide. Go.
It's social pressure to get engaged after knowing someone for a few months.
Yeah, like there's more sort of like backing behind these Netflix shows.
Yeah,
then
I agree, and I think that's. Oh no, sorry, I didn't want to.
No,
interrupt.
you're fine. I'm done. I was gonna say 2 words.
Well, I was just gonna say, and from my perspective, I feel like that's why shows like Too Hot to Handle and Love is Blind are probably going to be more successful in the long run. Every season after The Bachelor or Bachelorette, and even Bachelor in Paradise, people have to issue apologies, and the network has to come on and say they don't support racism, they don't support bullying, they don't support hate. And it's like, if your shows were maybe less superficial and less fueled by drama and more by things that audiences nowadays actually care about, you wouldn't have to issue public apologies every season. And that's just where they're at. Where shows, not necessarily like Sexy Beast, but Netflix's other shows, really, people walk out of it and they're like, I feel like I grew as a person. I have more of an understanding of myself, of what I want, of what's good for me in a relationship. And all that being said, I also feel like Netflix shows are either huge hits or huge misses, to the point that I can't imagine that all of these shows are coming out of the same exact studio. Like, I gotta say, even though we haven't finished talking about this episode or the next, Sexy Beast is not Love is Blind. It is not Too Hot to Handle. It is a very different type of show. It is a very different caliber of show. So if you did not heed our spoiler warning and you haven't watched it and you're listening to us now to determine if you're going to watch it, do keep listening to what we have to say, because it might really sway your hand in whether you want to watch this show.
No, in the spirit of moving on, like, as far as spoiling goes, I feel like even talking about it won't spoil it too much, just because the big reveal is, like, seeing them and the funny comments made in the show.
That is very true.
If you're going to watch a show, that's why you're watching it. So I feel like us saying their names isn't really going to impact you spoiling, but, we are trying to be nice and not spoil it for those that want the surprise. Those people that have, the MGM Sports app and they're betting on these dates, just for you. That's just for you.
We aim to please. So moving on from the speed dates, let's talk about Sexy Beast Manor. It's where all the big decisions happen. So how it works is all the contestants sit down in front of the Bachelor, Bachelorette. They'll say something about each of them, and then they will choose who to eliminate. So Emma, our devil, chose to eliminate Adam the mouse. Now, once they are eliminated, the face is revealed, and then it's showed to all the contestants, and they, I guess, have to see whether or not they regret their decision, which, if you do, it's probably very superficial of you.
Yeah.
Emma did not regret her decision, and I will say Adam looked exactly like how I expected him to look based on his attitude. So that's, I will, to your point, yeah, that is the big part of the show is, okay, what do these people actually look like? Like, this is how they're acting, this is how they're talking, what's behind all that makeup? And it is interesting to see, because it's also interesting to envision in your head for yourself what you think these people will look like. And I gotta say, Adam, I think I nailed him on the head and in my own head on what he looked like.
Yeah. He, I don't know what to say to that. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't too surprising, especially his attitude after leaving, you know?
Yeah, that's another thing. How people take...
That was to be expected.
Yeah. And I will say, I feel like the guys they gave her were not at the same level that she probably deserved, personally, based on attitude and attitude alone. I probably would have sent all of the guys home were it me, because I didn't find anything about them to be dateable. I mean, you might want to go to the bar with them one time. It might be cool to, like, go to the movies where you don't have to speak to them, but...
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I was really disappointed in the quality of men. Nothing against them. I'm sure there's more to them than we saw, maybe. But I was not impressed. And especially when we got to the second round of dates, which are supposed to be more personable, more intimate, I still didn't see much. Archie went first. Again, Archie was the rock god. They had a spa day, which is a nice little date, you know, great time for a conversation. You get to relax. And I felt like they were only talking about super surface level topics. You know, I mean, he guessed her age and said that made him intuitive. It's like, no, what? No, not at all. Like, that's just a lucky guess, bro. Like, you're not the next Houdini because you guessed her age. She's a model in New York. I bet a bunch of us could have accurately guessed her age. He also kept calling her man at the end of every sentence. He was like, yeah, man, sure, man, which I feel like I'll do that too when I shouldn't. You know, I'll call Nash bro and dude and all these things. But you don't call your female date man. You know, like, it's one thing if you guys have been dating for a while, you don't care, you're both chill. Not on a, maybe if we want to call it a second date. I would call this more of a first date than anything else. I was not impressed by Archie, which is disappointing because I was expecting more from him. I don't know why. Nothing led me to believe that I should expect more from him, but I was.
It is kind of refreshing to see just sort of normal people interacting, like trying to come up with a conversation on a date on TV, just because when you watch The Bachelor, Bachelorette, I feel like every time they talk, it's in the context of the show.
Yeah.
It's very rarely, like, actually how people talk.
And people on The Bachelor, Bachelorette, I will say, seem to be very aware of the fact, for the most part, that they're on national TV, and what they say and what they do is going to be scrutinized by Bachelor Nation. Not the case.
Not the case at all.
With these people. In fact, I think they would benefit a little bit from thinking before they speak in this show.
This show is just a bunch of bros being dudes. That's
yeah,
all it is.
That's a very, very accurate way to say that. So, Archie has his little guessing game in the spa, and then afterwards, she goes on her date with Bennett the baboon, who she did seem to have the most connection with from the speed dates. They go on a theme park date, which I feel like is a lot of fun. That's actually a good date idea. Again, he's super hung up on his looks. Like, the whole time this guy's talking, I'm like, wow, like, he must be the hottest guy to ever walk the earth. Or at least he seems to think so, because he kept bringing it up. It's not the only thing he kept bringing up. He kept asking really weird and really personal questions about her sex life and her preferences and all of this. And it's like, I get that that's a big thing for a lot of relationships. You want to be on the same page when it comes to that stuff. You don't necessarily want to ask her those questions when you're about to plummet down a roller coaster and also it's maybe your second time speaking to her ever, and you look like a baboon.
It's mental conditioning. He's putting the thought in her head. It's manipulative. He's a genius.
He's something.
No,
I don't know that I'd call him a
really,
genius, but he's something.
I don't really think it is, but it's a bold move, I'd say, because a lot of people wouldn't enjoy that.
No,
that wouldn't be a fun conversation topic.
It's off-putting, and I felt like I was surprised that at the end of the date she said how much fun she had, because it seemed like every time he asked her, and he asked her a lot, that she was made to be at least a little bit uncomfortable by the conversation. Yeah. So I was surprised to see that didn't put more of a damper on the date for her. But they did share a kiss at the end of it.
Oh, and that was weird.
Oh god, it was so weird. It was so weird that I was uncomfortable.
And he got red makeup all over his baboon mask.
Yes, he did. Her makeup got rubbed off. She stained his fuzzy chin. I'm sure to someone it was beautiful, just not to us. So, after their more intimate second dates, she's faced with a choice. If you've been listening closely, it should come to no surprise that she chose Bennett the baboon. And when they choose who they'd like to be with, they say, "You're my sexy beast." I felt like that makes everything 10 times worse. But there was a very, very awkward moment where after she chose Bennett, they hug it out, they're so excited, and the whole time Archie's just sitting there, and this goes on for like a few minutes, and I wanted to fast forward because it just went on for so long.
It was so funny. It was just like, oh god, he just has to watch. He just has to sit there and take it.
If you're someone who gets secondhand embarrassment, this might not be the show for you, because that is how I am, and I was very much made uncomfortable, but clearly Nash found it very entertaining. So,
it was hilarious.
Something to consider.
Because, like, I feel like in a lot of other shows, what they do is they'd, like, switch to, camera B, or, they'd switch to the other cameras in the room, so it, like, didn't seem as long. But this one, they, like, kept on, like, the same two cameras, just going back and forth between them hugging him on the couch and then just the close-up of his face.
Yeah, it's very clear that there's a small production team working on this project, and I can't help but wonder why.
And it works so well. Because that's the thing, that show is funny.
It's definitely, it's funny. Yeah, you won't get that with The Bachelor. It's definitely funny, and I think that's what you gotta take in stride with this show. And I feel like it's a show where we can laugh at it, and I'm sure the people behind it laugh at it.
Yeah.
So I don't feel too bad making a joke of it, but it's a good show if you need a laugh. But if you're looking for serious investment, not sure it's the one. But let's talk about the facial reveals of our two men and our lovely Lady Devil. Archie, our rock god, looked like a literal child. Like, I look young for my age. Like, I'm 23 and I still get asked if I'm bringing a fake to the bar. I look young. This guy looked even younger. Weirdly enough, they don't tell us the age of our contestants. Did you notice that?
Yeah, we only knew because he brought it up. We only knew Emma's because Archie asked her.
Yeah. I found it very weird that we don't get a sense of anything about them outside of this show. No real world context. But yeah, Archie looked like a child. He seemed a little bummed out, but how bummed out can you really be after knowing somebody for 2 hours? But let's talk about our lucky man, Bennett. The guy who is so hung up on his looks. Without I'm not going to be mean. That's not what we're here to do.
I don't even think you have to say anything else after saying
Bennett's not my type. We'll put it that way. For anyone who's ever seen Beauty and the Beast, at the end of the movie where Beast becomes a human and all of a sudden he didn't look that bad as a beast. It's a
Damn.
similar. That was actually very mean, but it's a similar situation.
I'm not gonna be mean, but let me just destroy this guy.
I had to say it because I've been thinking about it since we watched how much he looked like Human Beast.
Because it's the hair.
It is the hair. I'll give him this. I think if his hair was different, he would look a lot better. The hair for me is a big no. And I couldn't really gauge from Emma if it was also a no from her. Because another thing we don't get to see is obviously nobody wants to be mean. They chose these people. They do walk away with them. So far, we have, at this point in time, no idea what happens to them after this show. We have no idea if they're together, if they went on one date, or if they ghosted each other. Maybe we'll get a reunion special later down the line, but at this time, we have no idea. So all we can go off of is Bennett and Emma do walk away with each other at the end of this. Seeming to, well, moderately happy. I got the sense, I personally got the sense that she was a little disappointed at how Bennett looked, and I got the sense that Bennett was very excited by how she looked.
No, what makes you say that?
So that's just what I took away from that. But let's talk about episode 2 with our contestants, because Nash, you were a big fan of our bachelor James, who is dressed like a beaver. You want to give us a little bit of your insight on James?
I thought he was utterly hilarious. Because he seems like very conceited, and he didn't seem like the smartest guy ever, and he would just say anything that came to mind, and I can't fault him for that. It makes him an honest person, I guess, but it was just hilarious to watch him interact. Like, I don't think the fact that he was sort of the main, like that he was the bachelor for the episode, kind of made it hilarious. Like, I feel like you'd usually see him as one of the contestants, fighting for that person, but he was the one they were fighting after, and I think that made it way more entertaining.
Yeah, he was an interesting choice for the lucky guy for this episode, and I will say, back to that idea of, as these people are talking and interacting and going about their dates, you start to envision them in your head, and you start to think you have a sense of who they are behind the mask. And I will say, James, to his credit, is very much himself. What you see, what you get. He's very much himself. So at the very least, there's that. But yeah, not going to win any Nobel Prizes for intelligence down the line. And again, last episode, I was not impressed with the lineup of guys based on their personality. I felt like the women in this episode, James ended up getting very lucky because they all seemed like just very down-to-earth people at the end of the day. So you had Amber, who looked like a blue pixie, and she didn't look bad considering what she was. I think she probably, so far from what we've seen, has gotten the best makeup out of everyone, because it's still a feminine look to it, and it's not this weird, crazy thing. Then we got Alexis, who's a New York City law student, also a talented singer, and she was dressed like a leopard. Again, not too bad, nothing crazy, wasn't hurting her, not doing her any favors. And then we had poor Tamika, and they did my girl so freaking dirty. I would have left the show on the spot if I walked out in the makeup she had and saw what the other women looked like. They turned her into a zombie, and not just like a low budget cartoon zombie, like Walking Dead, rotting flesh, bones sticking out the face, zombie. Like, whoever got assigned to do her makeup that day really had a field day with it, and this is their official audition for the spin-off of The Walking Dead, because they really went above and beyond to make her look terrible.
Yeah, that was...
That's just foul. That's just foul.
No, I have to agree with that. Hers really was like aggressive. How different she looked compared to everybody else.
Yeah, hers was very, very unfair. Although James, being a beaver, did have to deal with fake teeth sticking out of his mouth.
That was hilarious.
But he took it like a champ, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But let's talk about the speed dates between James and these women. So right off the bat, he had sparks with Alexis, which was the leopard. I mean, I don't think anyone would be surprised. She's a law student. She's probably a very driven person, probably a very intelligent person. One thing I was shocked to hear is she says that she's never been on a formal date. Oh no, James said he had never been on a formal date. It's very, very obvious watching him interact with these women. I mean, he's just...
He blurts whatever he wants out.
Blurts whatever he wants out, always bringing it back to his muscles, but not in a conceited, cocky way. Like, I felt like the men from the first episode, I would describe them, most of them, as arrogant. James, I didn't feel like it was coming from arrogance. I feel like that's probably the thing he's most proud of, and so he wants to show it off. You know, he had a very childish side to him that I felt like that's just who he is. You know, he's this giant, big kid. He's proud of his muscles. He wants to show them off, and he doesn't see that. And it didn't come off like cocky, like, oh, I'm the best guy in here. It was more like, oh, like, I lift all the time. Like, look, like, you could see I lift all the time, which the other guys came off as like they felt that they were pretty boys. Whether or not they are pretty boys, I mean, watch and find out for yourself. But they were the pretty boy type. James is not that. He's, I think the word, I heard it from TikTok, so I might be using this wrong, is a himbo, which is basically like a big, lovable, giant idiot guy. And that's James.
I can't comment on your made-up words.
I think it's a made-up word. I've only ever seen it used on TikTok. But that's very much him. So he has the dates with all of the women, and all of them seem to go pretty well, which I was surprised by. It seems like all these women are very, very open to James and this experience. The whole time, James is like, oh, her body, oh, this, all of that, and I'm like, okay, man, like, you're missing the point of the show. It seems like the men in the first episode were kind of missing the point, and it seems like James was also missing the point. Nash, what do you attribute that to?
I'm not sure. I think it might just be sort of how normally, like in every other circumstance aside from this show, it's kind of like the opposite for people, or at least like you may not even be like cognizant of it, but it's just a subconscious thing that you do. And so now when it's sort of totally different, or at least trying to be totally different, I think it might make it difficult. And they're just trying to sort of center themselves back to what they're used to.
Interesting perspective. So another thing I'm going to want to get your perspective on. So we get back to the Sexy Beast Manor, as it's so lovely called.
I love his.
I want a sign for my future home that says "Welcome to Sexy Beast Manor" right over the archway. Anyway, so another thing that, again, James, no filter. I don't think he even realizes that filters are a thing people should have, because he doesn't have one in the least bit. He goes woman by woman and gives them a pro and a con to their face.
I loved it.
Like I've never seen anything quite like it.
It was like a little league like coach like.
It was like a little league coach that's never coached little league and telling these group of 6-year-olds why they suck. That's what it was.
So funny. Like, you're terrible at catching, but I love your attitude.
Yeah, that's exactly how it went. So he goes women by women and gives them a pro and con to their face, and he does say goodbye to Tamika the zombie, which I feel like personally, I think that had a lot more to do with the makeup than anything else. What did you think?
Yeah, well, that was something that I noticed. With in conjunction with the first episode too, and we've only seen the first two episodes for this episode of Trash Talk, so I'll be able to say more about it next time we watch more. But I sort of noticed how the first two contestants on both episodes we watched that got kicked out looked or were the furthest away from their like gender than the others. They because the first guy who got kicked off in the last episode was the mouse in pink, and he got kicked off. Be it he was really arrogant too. That's fine. And this one, the zombie makeup, she looked like, I would say, like a male zombie, if I was being honest.
Yeah, they didn't even give her hair.
Yeah, they took her hair off. I feel like they made her jawline a lot bigger, especially with the part where her jaw was sticking out of her face. Like, I feel like that was sort of interesting to see how, because to me it made you think people are still sort of judging people by how they look, even if they're in a ton of makeup and they look nothing like they actually do. It's sort of it's almost like they're still going with that basic instinct of just how they look.
Yeah. I think I agree 100% with everything you've said so far in this, and it'll be really, really interesting to see what happens in the remaining episodes to see if that theme continues to hold true, because I would say that it will, based on my initial reactions, because it's exactly right. The people who have more, let's say, appealing, for lack of a better term, makeup are doing better. And I think it would have been very interesting for Emma had she not been the bachelorette position, dressed as a devil. What kind of connotation is that going to give someone if she was standing next to a pixie and a leopard? Would she have gone home in that instance? I think the fact that she was the one getting to choose had a lot to do with it, with her success, I guess you could call it. I think if she was in a different position, she might have gotten sent home a lot sooner.
Yeah, it's weird that their roles were sort of went totally against like those normal sort of classical gender standards, I'd say, if I was trying to sound intelligent. It's weird. And watching it, it's interesting. Someone could probably do a case study on this.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. The proposal for our latest study. Gonna make a lot of money on that, I'm sure. Alright, so he obviously says goodbye to Tamika, gets to see her face, and immediately he's like, oh man, I hope I made the right decision. Because he totally based that off of the fact that she looked like a zombie. And that it was clear as soon as he gets to look at her that he was like, man.
Yeah, it's like, oh man,
Yeah. But we do move on to the second round of dates with Amber and Alexis. Amber, they go for a private ice sculpting date, which is actually a super cool date idea. I don't know where you'd even go to start that, but it seemed like they really did have a connection during that date. As a reminder, Amber, again, is the blue pixie, the more feminine looking of the two, just based off our last argument. Seems like they have a really good date. Seems to be good banter between the two. Again, James having no filter, one of the questions she asked, because he kept bringing up that he loved her body. So she says, if I gained 300 pounds and we were together, what would you do? And he fumbles and is like, I don't know. And she's like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, again, James having no concept of filters or, regular, polite human interaction.
And see, honestly, like, we can all agree that probably wasn't the smart thing to do.
No.
But at least he's sort of being, straight up about it.
Oh yeah, he's honest to a fault.
Yeah, it's just you'd sort of, for him to be on the show, you'd sort of expect someone to get over that.
Yeah, right?
It
I
would
feel
seem.
like I feel like James is one of those people, back to what we were talking about earlier, that signed up for this show thinking it was regular speed dating and then was too far into it to back out of it. I sincerely think James probably thought he was signing up for something different when he signed up for this show.
Or like somebody else wrote him in and he got a letter. It's like, oh, cool, I'm gonna be on TV.
Yeah. He read the first line of the email and then stopped there.
But I think it was also important to note too that he also turned it into a competition.
Yeah, he did.
And then with his second date, if you don't mind me segueing into that one.
No, let's get on it.
Where he went shooting with Alexis, he also turned that into a competition.
Yes. And not a friendly one at that. It's very much, he was not trying to be nice. Again, just no filter, fully himself, where they're like, oh, competition, that's fun. And he's like, I'm going to win, you're going to lose. It wasn't, he obliterated Alexis in the shooting competition. Didn't even try to be nice. Didn't compliment her. Didn't say, oh, I've done this before. He was like, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could date someone like James. It's a give and take, you know? But Alexis must have been, he's very honest, unfortunately. I wish he'd lie a little bit, actually. But it must have been doing something for Alexis because they shared a lovely little beaver kiss.
It was weird.
It was so weird. It was worse than the first one.
Yeah, I like the devil and the baboon one better.
If we have to choose, yes. The fact that that's a sentence that you're saying out loud on recording, who would have ever thought? But yeah, they share a beaver kiss, and she basically pressed her lips against his prosthetic teeth.
Emily, I don't think you can say beaver kiss. I think that means something. Okay, we'll just move on.
I should have wrote something different in my notes. Anyway, please don't sue us. So,
gosh, now I have to change this to mature.
The FCC is going to be calling us any day now. So it finally comes down to the choice, and he chooses Alexis. To be completely honest, I really thought it was going to be Amber, despite
I did too.
Despite all of his comments that would have probably made her want to walk away, she didn't, and she was a little disappointed. You know, with a prize like James at the end of this tunnel, I was surprised, nothing against James, great guy, surprised at how disappointed Alexis was and how excited Amber was, or switch that, how excited Alexis was and how disappointed Amber was. And again, they do the reveal. It seemed like everyone involved was ready for whatever was going to come after this show. With it not being with each other.
Yeah, I feel like by the end of it, he kind of dug himself into a pit a little bit.
Yeah.
Which, you know, this show never said it's the best option. Like, I'm curious how they get people to, how they choose the people to be on each episode. I would love to know what that process looks like. Like how they select them. Like, because when people sign up, do they just sign up to be whatever? That's what I'm feeling, and then they separate them as need be.
Well, I think Bumble actually sells your information to Netflix.
Oh my God.
I mean, you know, because if I'm going to be totally honest, the quality of relationships you're getting is probably less than what you'd find on Bumble. This is like the Tinder of dating shows. Don't expect a lot, you're not going to get a lot. It's really what it is.
Recording only takes a day or two, so
yeah, few hours.
Filming, you're done before the week's over, so
yeah. Well, trash talkers, if you're still listening, thank you. We know this is going to be a rough one, but we always appreciate your support. If you want to show us even more support, make sure to go follow us on Instagram at Trash Talk TV Podcast if you aren't already, and you can subscribe to our new YouTube channel under the same name if Spotify's not doing it for you anymore. DM us your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you, especially how you felt about these episodes. It's quite interesting to say the least. In the meantime, that's our